Welcome to the Caddo Convos, the podcast that explores the vibrant community of businesses thriving in Caddo Office Reimagined. We're here to shine a light on the incredible entrepreneurs and professionals who make the most of our private offices, co-working spaces, and day office rentals in the Dallas-Fort Worth suburbs. Join us as we share their stories, celebrate their successes, and dive into the benefits of working in a space that's close to home but offers so much more than working from home. Let's get started with today's conversation. Today on the Caddo Convos, I'm joined at the Lakewood location by Alex Rowe of Dedicated Books. How you doing, Alex?
Great. Thank you for having me.
It's great to be here. What a great location this is. Lakewood, I'm down here somewhat regularly, but it's just a beautiful place of Dallas.
It's a beautiful place of Dallas in a beautiful neighborhood. The Lower Greenville, Lakewood neighborhood is awesome. Tons of restaurants, cafes, lots of small business owners. This is really a great community. The office space is beautiful. It's an old bank. It has, an old vault down there, and it's accessible and you can see it. Very high ceilings. It's a beautiful building.
And it makes sense that an old bank, we're talking financial, we're talking bookkeeping. So tell me about your business and how you help your customers.
That's right. So we work with small and mid-sized businesses. I would say typically 1 million to all the way up to 50 million in revenue. And we help them understand their numbers. So, a lot of small businesses on the small side, they have the same problems as the larger businesses. They might look different, but ultimately business owners want to make sense of their numbers. And so a small business, they typically treat the accounting function as an administrative task, administrative burden. Sometimes they have a professional doing it in-house. Sometimes they don't. Typically, it's not done very sophisticated in any sophisticated way. They're doing it for the sake of doing it, but they're missing out on the strategic insights that larger, more sophisticated companies benefit from. Understanding your margins, understanding where you should invest in your business, knowing whether you should hire or not hire, when you should invest in a new product, different things like that. So we help companies and management teams and business owners make those decisions.
Because without understanding your numbers, without measuring, how can you make decisions? Right.
Exactly.
At any size of business.
Exactly. And, like I said, the small business, it's because they're treating it as administrative burden. So it all starts with a very strong foundation. Getting your books in order in a really high quality way allows you to then extract information that makes sense. Because if it's not, it's garbage in, garbage out. And it's the same thing with larger companies. The larger companies, they might not fully appreciate the reason. They think it has to do with the reporting. The person that is generating the reports, their CFO or controller or bookkeeper, this person does not know how to create the right reports. And it's like, well, maybe, and that's part of it, but it's likely because you can't trust the data and you don't trust the numbers because that foundation isn't strong. So typically what we do is we come in, we reorganize, rebuild their entire financial and accounting operation, reorganize their chart of accounts, bring it up to best practices, implement sort of a one source of truth framework. And from there, we can extract the financial data exactly as it is set up in the accounting system. There's no manipulating of the data to present it in a certain way, because that's where a lot of the mistakes are made, is in that manual manipulation of data to present it on how, the finance team thinks the management team wants to see it, or thinks investors want to see it this way. And that's why typically the data is not very reliable in those instances, even in the larger companies. So we help bring, strategic insights, or the ability to develop strategic insights from the financial data to businesses essentially of all sizes, from, like I said, 1 million to all the way 50 million, the largest client that we have. So it ranges, but at the end of the day, the value proposition is very much the same.
Yeah. Get the numbers right.
Exactly.
Make decisions based on that. Tell me a story. We're all listening for our type of business. So pick one out of the air that you helped from the beginning, and where are they now? How are they doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even have to pick one, because the story is often so similar.
No
so
kidding.
It's wild how similar it is. Maybe if they're on the really smaller end, it's a little bit more simple. But generally speaking, in the 5 to 10 million range, all the way up to 50 plus, typically what happens is it's founder-owned businesses, and the accounting team is the same team from when it was a 4 or 5 person shop. And that team graduates with the business, gets the fancier titles, head of finance, CFOs, controller, different titles. Sometimes there's layers, sometimes multiple people, sometimes just maybe two people in that role. But their skill set hasn't actually really advanced. And it's no knock on them, right? They're good people that are trying hard, but they're not able to create GAAP financials. They don't know how to think on a forward-looking basis and how to create financial models and projections and properly model, monthly cash flows on a go-forward basis. They don't know, they're not keeping up with the latest technology that's available in the market to create efficiencies and reduce errors. They're not, because they've never had to. They are kind of doing things more or less the same way. Maybe they've transitioned from cash to accrual, which is probably the biggest change that some of these folks have implemented. But other than that, there's a lot of spreadsheets, there's a lot of manual intervention, there's a lot of patchwork. Think of it like an old IT system, from 40 years ago at these like larger companies that are just patched and patched and patched. It's much different than sort of the nimble, cloud-based operation. It's the same concept at the end of the day. And, typically I come in and, our team comes in and we very quickly are able to identify patterns. And typically the things I look for is, okay, I want to see the chart of accounts or the general ledger and see how transactions are being input. Are they all being put manually? Are their accruals done in a manual, every single entry is done manually, or are there tools in place to make sure it's consistent and accurate? See the order of the accounts. Does it follow industry best practice? When we run the financials, is it going to look the same as the way the chart of accounts are in there? So what I mean by that is I'll also look at the financial statements as presented to management or investors or lenders or third parties, and I'll compare that to the chart of accounts. And I'll see, are they exactly the same or are they different? If they're different, that tells me that there is some manual intervention in there that's taking place. And that's where a lot of the mistakes are made. And then also looking through those chart of accounts, are things following GAAP? How closely is it following GAAP? Obviously, the operating financials don't need to be, and bookkeeping doesn't need to be, audit quality GAAP, but is it generally following those principles or not? And, that's very telling. And typically what I find is they're not. And even when they are, there's an issue that's somewhere in that chain of events, right? It's the quality of the input, it's following best practices or not, from a GAAP perspective, but then the accounting system to the reporting and looking for how different that is. And typically it's very different. So right there, we know, okay, what we want to do is we come in, we reset the chart of accounts to follow the industry's best practice, to follow their industry's best practice, I should say, what investors would expect, what lenders would expect, what a sophisticated management team would expect. And the reason they expect it that way is because what they're looking for is to be able to have quick and informative takeaways by scanning those financial statements. If they're not able to do that, then those financial statements are basically useless. And the way a traditional bookkeeper thinks about their chart of accounts and financials might be very different from the way an investor thinks about it. And with the more sophisticated that you want the operation to be to make smarter decisions, those financial statements are really designed for the investor, not for the bookkeeper. And that's sort of the transition that needs to be made. And I see it all the time. Like I said, you asked for one specific example. The problem is, I would say 80%, maybe more, 90% of businesses that come to me looking for my help fit that model.
So let's talk about you. And how did you get into this business, Alex? You didn't just wake up one morning and I am going to control financials. There's something that inspired you. We all have a path to where we are now.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's what differentiates the value proposition that we bring to our clients. So I have an accounting degree, but I'm not actually an accountant by trade. So my background's in finance. So I spent 10 years in New York. I have CFA, MBA, not a CPA, but I spent a lot of time in investment banking. I also spent a few years out in Singapore, investing and lending to growth stage businesses. So I've seen all types of businesses from, early stage startups to publicly traded, international companies. And that's when I started to notice, as I, going more and more into the investing from investment banking, I saw that the smaller these companies get, the more help they need with, developing some of the financial reporting and the tools and the KPIs and the metrics they need to make strategic decisions. And I kind of like picked up on this as a theme. But okay, so I pocketed that and, left that industry. I wanted to go to the entrepreneurship route. So I raised some money from some investors to acquire a company back in the United States, and searched for a while and spoke to hundreds of business owners. And I started to realize this recurring theme again. These business owners typically are not really ready to sell their business. They are mentally, but their financials are not prepared in the way that investors are expecting them. They're also not prepared in a way that they're actually able to make informed business decisions. They're a lot of founders, business owners, they're kind of shoot from the hip. They know the business, they have a feel for their business, but it's not, data driven. It's sort of in their head, which is not a scalable model, and it's also not an optimized model. And a third party that might be looking to acquire a business or invest in a business, they're not going to invest in that. They want to know, what are the numbers? It's great that you know them, but we need to see it. So I actually shifted my my thesis to searching for accounting firms to acquire. And after cycling through a few industries, as I saw this theme continue, I started to focus on accounting, built this thesis that this is where business owners need help. And I found that there was essentially largely two buckets of accounting firms out there. There's sort of the traditional CPA firms, and they're very good at taxes and year-end work. They're not very good at the monthly cadence of like business advisory and thinking about it from an operating perspective. They're just not. They're very project-based. They look down on bookkeeping typically. And that's no problem, right? Like it is what it is. They're, a lot of these are partner driven and they want to do the more complex stuff and that's fine. And that's just where their value is. And they charge a lot of money for, very high quality tax work. And I work with plenty of great CPAs right now that focus on taxes and they do an excellent job. But then on the other side, you have a lot of bookkeeping firms that, they're not very sophisticated. There's a lot of, say, not to stereotype, and I'm sure there's, but like a stay-at-home mom that wants some extra income that's like doing bookkeeping for the, cupcake shop down the street, right? Like that's kind of a stereotype, but ultimately there's sort of a lot of that. And that kind of checks the box of probably low cost, fine, but not very sophisticated. It's still treating bookkeeping as sort of this administrative function. So I started looking for firms that add the value that I'm looking for on a monthly cadence. And sure, there's a handful out there that are doing it, but not very many doing it well. And so I decided, frankly, I gave my investors their money back and started my own firm.
Nice.
And, which is great. It's, about a year in, we're hiring already and things are going great. Lots of demand. I think the thesis and the lens that I bring to businesses, I think resonates with a lot of business owners. It's not just sort of the accountant that's, recording numbers for tax purposes. It's like, yes, we need to do the bookkeeping right. And the foundation needs to be strong, but with that strong foundation, we can actually extract a lot of insights and help business owners make strategic decisions, help them invest in their own business, determine what type of loans to take, if they should hire, what projects to take on, what clients to drop, right? A lot of businesses are, they think all revenue is the same, but not all revenue is created equal. There's certain clients that are more profitable than others. And, that should be, some are loss making, right? It might make a lot of money on the top line and revenue, but they're actually losing money on that client. And what they find is you drop some of these clients, you actually make more money, you take more money home. And so these are the types of insights that we're able to provide. We can get them ready for investors. We're very good at communicating with investors. Me as a former investment banker, investor myself, I speak their language. A lot of folks bring me on just frankly, because of that right there is like, how do we position ourselves to be able to raise money? How do we position ourselves to raise VC, to raise private equity money? It's like, well, I speak those languages. I know folks in that industry. My background is essentially in that industry. So we add a lot of value and we take everything from that lens, business optimization, and that. So that excites me. And that's my background. And that's essentially how we're able to provide this value that I think most other folks in the space are not able to provide in the same way.
Having started the business, You chose a business location. We mentioned Cat Office Reimagined right off the top of the show. Why did you choose this location for your business?
It started moving down to Dallas. I thought Dallas would be a great place to build a business. Growing market, low taxes, reasonable cost of living, all these different things, and very dynamic economy. It's a big market, but we serve clients nationally, frankly. Actually, I don't have as many clients in Dallas than I do in the rest of the country. But certainly, we love Dallas. But this Caddo office specifically, coming from cities like New York and Singapore, and some of the other places I lived, it was really important for our family to live in a walkable neighborhood. So, the Lower Greenville neighborhood is where we live. I actually walk to this office every morning. I walk home for lunch. Every day I get to hang out with my daughter. I have plenty of time with my family, and that's really important to me. So, that, coupled with sort of this awesome office space that's just, frankly, is beautiful. You're not going to find anything like it, in my opinion, at least in Dallas. And it just so happens to be in the neighborhood. I mean, that was part of why we moved to where we moved. One of the considerations was this Caddo office was great and within walking distance of where we want to be. And then, oh, by the way, also walking distance to cafes, restaurants, shops, whatever it is. And parks for the kids. So for us, it's a no-brainer. We really prefer to walk when we can rather than drive. So it all kind of worked together.
That's really great. Well, people who are getting to know you and listening to you have so much history behind you for your career and the different things you can bring to the table. How do they reach you? What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is a great way. Alex Rowe, I think I have CFA at the end that helps differentiate, and based in Dallas, Dedicated Books. Also, feel free to send me an email, alex@dedicatedbooks.com. That's probably the easiest way. I'm on email a lot, obviously. So, I'm always happy to have conversations, chat, meet new people. I'm generally available and enjoy conversations.
So parting thoughts for people who, again, business owners or other people that are in bookkeeping or whatnot, how would you encourage them to keep doing what they're doing? And if they need help, obviously reach out to you.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a very important space. It's very important for businesses. I enjoy working with all sorts of different folks, other accounting firms that need help. I'm always happy to chat, but certainly businesses. I'd say, stop thinking of accounting and finance as an administrative burden. QuickBooks is a very popular accounting tool, obviously, but at the end of the day, it's just a digital filing cabinet, right? So garbage in, garbage out. You can get the job done. But, start thinking more strategically like the big companies do, right? They hire CFOs. They pay these people a lot of money. Well, we can offer a service where you don't have to pay a lot of money. In fact, we can give you the full stack bookkeeper, controller, CFO for less than the price of a full-time bookkeeper, right? So, and we do it better, frankly. But either way, even if it's not a fit, happy to chat and give guidance and help and walk through, problem solve. These things interest me. I'm doing it because I enjoy it. And, even if it's not a fit, I'm always happy to guide in the right direction. And keep working hard.
Awesome. Well, Alex, thanks for coming on the Caddo Convos today. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on the Caddo Convos podcast. A huge shout out to our incredible network of members for making our community vibrant and supportive. If you're looking to boost your productivity and reduce the isolation of working from home, consider joining us at Caddo Office Reimagined. Our spaces are designed to meet your evolving needs, support remote work, and foster a sense of community that's hard to find at home. Whether you're a startup aiming for growth, a freelancer seeking a professional setting, or a company looking to optimize resources, Caddo offers a perfect blend of flexibility and innovation. By joining us, you'll be a part of a dynamic business ecosystem that helps you thrive. For more information, visit caddooffices.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Caddo Convos.